Kramer is putting together the finest season of his times erratic. And against the Redskins on this Sunday afternoon, he wasted little time in bringing his Vikings back. "48 yards to number 83, Steve Jordan, was soon followed by a rollout strike to Anthony Carter. And in a matter of 4 plays and 2 minutes, Kramer had marched the Vikings down to the Washington 1-yard line. The drive was finished off by Ted Brown, number 23, and very quickly the Vikings had rebounded. No lead would turn out to be safe in this contest that would feature a record-setting performance by Kramer and another outstanding game by the Redskin Schrader. For now, it was 10-7 Washington, but not for long. On Minnesota's next possession, little Leo Lewis was the big man for the Vikings. The 5'8" dynamo raced behind the Washington secondary, and Kramer dropped a perfect pass into his hands. 67 yards later, the Vikings had the lead. The Kramer-Lewis connection would surface again in the second half. But now, as the first quarter reached its conclusion, it had produced a 14-10 advantage for the Vikings.
Don't worry, little one. Daddy's got Tylenol for his headache.
Only $37.95. Money back if not completely satisfied.
ESPN Sports Century's 50 greatest athletes. They called him the King. 7 majors in 7 years. 4 Masters, back-to-back British Opens. An army grew around him. Before Arnold Palmer, golf was an exclusive game for a privileged few. He changed the course of the game forever. Sports Century athlete number 29, Arnold Palmer. Friday at 7:30 and 10:30 on ESPN. Presented by General Motors.
This is ESPN Classic.
The first quarter had its share of big plays, particularly on offense. As the second quarter got underway, the tempo of the game changed, and defense assumed a more important role, especially the Viking defense. Minnesota totally shut down Rodgers after the Redskins' initial scoring drive, holding the NFC's second leading rusher to 24 first-half yards on 11 carries. But while the Vikings' defense took charge, their offense stalled. This bad snap from center was the crushing blow as Washington's Dexter Manley scooped up the ball and rambled into the end zone. The Redskins had regained the lead, but a missed extra point left them with a 2-point advantage, 16-14. It would come back to haunt them later. But now, midway through the second quarter, Tommy Kramer and the Minnesota offense needed to regroup. One bit of poor execution could not destroy the offensive success the Vikings were having. It didn't. Kramer led the Vikings on a time-consuming drive that showcased offensive balance at its best. The running of Alfred Anderson was complemented by 3 Kramer passes to tight end Steve Jordan, number 83, who was well on his way to his best day as a pro. With less than 2 minutes remaining in the first half, the Vikings had the ball at the Minnesota 12-yard line. On a 3rd down and 2, Minnesota appeared to vault back into the lead. Darren Nelson's swift burst up the middle took him into the end zone, but the play was nullified due to a holding penalty. The Vikings still managed to grab the lead back as Chuck Nelson drilled a 39-yard field goal with just over a minute left until halftime. A topsy-turvy first half had produced 3 lead changes, a defensive touchdown, and a touchdown that didn't count. Mere child's play compared to the happenings that would occur in the second half. And it didn't take long for the excitement to begin. Tommy Kramer went back to his tight end Steve Jordan, and Minnesota was in the end zone on its first offensive possession of the second half. The touchdown increased the Vikings' advantage to 24-16 early in the third quarter, and the catch and carry gave Jordan his first 100-yard receiving game in the NFL. This underrated overachiever from Brown in the Ivy League caught more passes than any NFC tight end in 1985. And this season, Jordan has remained a solid, consistent performer, capable of finding the openings in the defense. He would finish this game with 6 receptions for a career-best 179 yards. This 68-yard touchdown was merely the beginning of a second half that evolved into a passing frenzy. Now, 5 minutes into period 3, the Vikings were on top, 24-16.
Click and pick choices. Then tune into ESPN Classic Sunday at 7 to see if your pick is the classic click and pick of the week. It's only on ESPN Classic.
This is ESPN Classic.
Having just been torched for a long touchdown pass, the Redskins regrouped by going airborne themselves, with number 81, Art Monk, starting things off with a bang. Monk's 39-yarder set up the second field goal of the game for Max Zendejas. But this was going to be one of the last happy moments Max would enjoy in the contest. With the kick, Washington trimmed Minnesota's lead to 24-19, and then quickly dispatched the Viking offense on their next series. Dexter Manley's second sack of the game halted Minnesota for one of the few times in the game and returned the ball back into the very hot hands of Jay Schrader, who then proved that his feet should share equal billing. The first of several key Schrader scrambles got the Redskins' next drive literally off on the right foot. Gary Clark's catch finished the wild play, and then the Redskins gambled on a 4th and 2, calling on George Rogers to get the needed first down yardage. Rogers got it, and a good deal more. "40 yards later, Rogers was in the end zone, and the Redskins had regained the lead. As the NFC's number 2 rusher, the Washington war whoop of "Let George do it" was never more appropriate. Once past the short yardage contained, it was a merry jaunt indeed through Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. In a game replete with long plays that seemed to feed on each other, the Redskin defense was determined to end the string. Having shut down the Vikings convincingly on their last drive, the defense tried for a repeat performance. But despite Dexter Manley's exhortations, it didn't happen as the Vikings exploded once again for a long touchdown. The longest play in a game filled with long plays. Leo Lewis turned cornerback Vernon Dean around and raced 76 yards for the score, his second of the game. Leo finished the afternoon with a 53 yards per catch average. And his pass buddy, quarterback Tommy Kramer, was also piling up great numbers. Tommy was nicked on the wrist, but the injury didn't seem to bother him in the slightest. As the fourth period began, the Viking defense got the ball back to Kramer, who then continued to fire his Tommy gun, strafing the Skins secondary with a series of on-target tosses. The key play on Minnesota's drive was not a completion at all. Kramer misconnecting with Lewis in the end zone, but the play still had a happy ending for the Norsemen. Cornerback Barry Wilburn was flagged for interference, putting the ball at the 1-yard line. But Washington wasn't going to let Minnesota in easily, at least not yet. Fullback Ted Brown was stacked up inches short, much to the total disbelief of an agitated Kramer. But Tommy quickly cooled out and found much easier access to the end zone on the next play, with a casual flip to Darren Nelson, Kramer's fourth touchdown pass of the game. With the score, the Vikings had a solid 12-point lead with less than 7 minutes remaining in the game.
Smidge of bad news, folks. Your Taurus got nailed by one of the side rollers. Let's test drive this Buick Century instead.
But we're spending the day with my mother.
Grammy, Kay. So, Mom, you like the roomy 6-person seating?
Who are you?
I'm Lester, Marge's son.
I really like the handling.
Oh, yeah. Century's got standard traction control, ABS brakes.
Beats our Taurus LX.
Hey, you want to drive it?
I'd love to, Lester.
Test drive at Century by Buick and see just how much more you get than the Taurus LX, including $1,500 cash back.
You look a little pale, Lester.
Oh, I'm fine.
Alicia thinks she understands men better than I do.
And Dayanara says she knows what men want.
Guys, I say that what gives Mirror Light its great taste is the choice hops. Agreed?
Yeah!
And I say you prefer the great taste because it's smooth. Guys?
Yeah!
So it doesn't make any difference to you why Miller Lite tastes great?
Yeah!
Miller Lite, taste the true Pilsner.
Look, are you with her or with me?
Yeah!
Set your clock for good time.
And boogie!
And the minute our eyes heat, I knew she was Gladys Knight and I was the Pips.
Call now and get in all the good times with Good Times, now on home video.
I rated D for dang old man.
Stop that nonsense before something falls off.
Call me a cup of coffee and make it like I like my man, hot, black, and strong.
Good Times, the Collector's Edition. Own 4 of the funniest episodes ever for just $4.95 plus shipping and handling.
I'm an Orange Keys. What I know algebra before anyway? What am I, an Algerian?
So set your clock for Good Times on home video. Operators are standing by.
To get your first 4-episode video of Good Times, the Collector's Edition for only $4.95 plus shipping, have your credit card ready and call toll-free 1-800-754-0077. That's 1-800-754-0077.
This is ESPN Classic.
This track meet of a game continued at a rapid clip as Schrader blazed a bomb to tight end Clint Didier, fueling Washington's comeback hopes. On the very next play, the Air Express kept a rolling, and Art Monk was there for an on-time delivery. 34-yard play was, hard to believe, only the first Redskin touchdown pass of the game. It just seemed as if Washington had thrown more. But if the Skins didn't have the most touchdown catches, Art Monk's sprawling dive was certainly the prettiest one of the game. Monk's marvelous moments sent spirits soaring throughout the nation's capital. But then Max Zendejas burst the bubble by missing his second extra point of the game. Washington now trailed 38-32, but had scored so quickly that when the Redskin defense stopped Kramer on the next series, there was still over 3.5 minutes left to work with. Number 77, Darrell Grant, and the Washington defense had done their job, and now it was time for another Schrader scramble. Jay sent all his targets deep, rolled out of the pocket, and then launched another blistering bomb. Clint Didier was there at the Minnesota 2, but there was some doubt as to whether he caught the ball. The officials checked the replay and let matters stand. No trap, a completed pass, and a critical 44-yard Redskin gain. With a little over a minute to go, Washington was in business. George Rogers got the call, and he responded with his third touchdown of the game. The Skins had completed an amazing comeback and were now just an extra point away from taking the lead. But astonishingly, Max Zendejas, the man brought in just weeks ago to replace all-time Redskin kicking great Mark Mosley, failed again. It was Max's third miss of the contest. Any one of them would have put the home team ahead. Instead, Minnesota got the ball back with one last chance to win. Rookie safety Todd Bowles intercepted Kramer to end any hopes of a Minnesota victory in regulation. And with 44 seconds to go, Washington could still pull it out. Again, Schrader scrambled, but this time the results were not as successful as his previous tries. With the pickoff by number 21 Rufus Best, the game ripped into overtime with both teams deadlocked at 38. Washington won the toss and wasted no time, going to the air immediately. The Viking defense was beaten for a couple of quick completions, prompting Minnesota head coach Jerry Burns to signal in a different strategy. But whatever his suggestion was, it did not work. With barely a minute and a half gone in OT, Schrader and wide receiver Gary Clark hooked up for an electrifying game-winning play. Clark, the NFC's leading receiver, capped off a brilliant day with his 38-yard score. And the Redskins, after many emotional stops and starts, had themselves an unbelievable overtime victory. For Schrader, it was a climax to a 378-yard passing day. Not as many as the Viking record 490 that rivaled Tommy Kramer total. But Kramer surely would have traded his gaudy numbers for the win. It was the highest scoring game in Washington since the Skins beat the Giants 72-41 in 1966, which, by the way, is the highest scoring game in NFL history. But that's a footnote for the historians. Of greater importance to the Redskins of today is that the victory keeps them in a first-place tie with the Giants. And in just a few weeks, those two teams will square off right here in RFK in what could be a division-deciding game. Knowing that they can win a battle like this one against the Vikings will be a comforting thought to the Redskins when that big date with the Giants finally arrives.
California Angels record breakers. It's midseason 1970 and a